name is Heather McGee, and this is the Happily Never After, a podcast that explores how life's endings can lead to a personal breakthrough. Because sometimes the end is just the beginning. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Happily Never After, a podcast where we explore how life's endings can lead to a new beginning. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate, review, and follow us wherever you are listening or watching the show today. Today, we're talking about a real popular subject on this podcast, shame. And I've asked an expert to come in and chat with us about it, Dr. Naomi Bernstein, who is a clinical psychologist with 19 years of experience specializing in somatic mindfulness with individuals and couples navigating relationship challenges. She is also the co-host of the popular podcast Oversharing, which I enjoy listening to myself. It's a really great show and recommend it if you're not already listening to it. Dr. Naomi helps us understand how our nervous system drives conflict, disconnection, and reactivity, and how real change begins from the inside out. Dr. Naomi, thank you so much for being here today.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this and reach a new audience. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's a real meaty subject. Why don't we start with the basics? Can you talk about what is your definition of shame?
Yeah, I like to use a really super simple definition, which is that shame is ultimately a fear of disconnection. So when you boil it all down, right? It's loaded, it has so much content and imagery even and feelings, but at the root of it is a fear of disconnection. In the sense that when whatever it is that we're holding, there is this fear that if someone finds out about this thing that I've experienced, or even just sometimes it's not even behaviors, it's just thoughts that can
Yeah.
create shit like some doesn't even exist, not even a real, never even happened, just a neurons firing in the brain. That if someone found this out about me, that I would be excluded or disconnected or a fear of not belonging.
Well, this unifies things because to me, there are two big sources of shame things that you have done that you feel shame over. And there are things that have happened to you that you weren't a part of that happening, but you feel shame about that, which are two very different experiences. But what you just defined brings those things together. For you, how is that experience different? How do you think about the differences between those two kinds of shame?
Yeah, I think that it really, even if something is done to you in that moment, I think what brings the shame are feelings of powerlessness sometimes, or feelings of I should have stood up in a different way, or I should have advocated, or I shouldn't have stayed so long, or I shouldn't have allowed. So there is a behavior embedded underneath it. There is still some sort, even if it's just a thought, or like we talked about, if there's a behavior embedded underneath something happening to you, that it then I think becomes the shameful behavior. So even if it's, I think we've used the example of like being in an abusive relationship, even though that is something that has been done to you, you have been abused. We are so quick. And then we can talk about evolution and where it comes from and how it's wired into us to very quickly, some groups more than others in terms of oftentimes women more than men, or some groups more than others are very quickly wired to say, how is this my fault? What did I do wrong? How can I fix this? So I think when it comes to those two different types of shame, we will sift through years of abuse and find the one little thread of what did I do wrong here? Or what could I have done to prevent this? Or even within that abuse, sometimes there are behaviors that come out that we then focus on the shame of, whether it's even not just an allowing, but an engaging, which I think people don't want to talk about. Like you kind of have to do what you have to do to survive sometimes in those types of situations.
Whenever something has happened to you and you feel shame, being worried that other people are going to find out about it, I think sometimes people find the courage to start talking about it and say, this happened to me. But then others react with, well, why didn't you leave sooner? Like
Yes.
almost trying to bring the shame back. how can people deal with that in a way that keeps them moving forward instead of moving backwards?
Totally. It is hard to choose the context in which you share, and I think it matters. I really love um, the AA model, for dealing with these types of issues because right off the bat, and it's the same thing. I run therapy groups. And some people are very much like, individual therapy feels like the safest, best path. And of course, in therapy, you're going to ideally, if you choose an experienced therapist, you're not going to get that response. So choosing a therapist to open up to, or even in these group therapy situations that, I run in my practice, everyone's showing up with the intention to listen and everyone has their own shame and everyone's very aware of kind of leaning in and just listening and being supportive and kind of, ideally not making those types of comments. So I think it is hard to find the context in which to share because sometimes your parents are not the ones, or your partner is not the one, or your best friend might not be the one,
Right.
even though those are the ones where you feel closest to. So there is something really powerful about coming in. That's why AA is really helpful for a lot of people because you walk in on day one and you say, this is my name and I'm an alcoholic or I'm an addict or whatever it is. And you know that everyone in there is there to embrace that and to invite you in. So there are certain contexts that are set to do that in a way that you can ideally avoid those types of reactions. And I think sometimes people do think, oh, well, of course I'm going to go to my sister or my parents. And sometimes it's great, but sometimes more of a therapeutic setting is a better place to start because it's set with that purpose.
Well, it's a safe environment where you can
Yes.
it's almost the way I think about it, and please tell me if you think this is a healthy way to approach it
Sure.
or if I, like, made up this thing that's not so great. I kinda think of it like a muscle, like, you just take a little baby step out there and just try it. Like, I think sometimes, and to your point, something you said earlier, we're so hard on ourselves. We'll find the one thing we did wrong, and we'll focus on that and be like, "Well, this is all my fault."
Hmm.
It's like overboard accountability. And I kind of feel with things like this, or at least what's worked for me, just take a little baby step. Like, don't go all the way up to 100. Start in maybe a safe environment. Just start to talk about it a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. And then over time, I think you really find the courage and the resilience to no matter how someone reacts to me, I know that's their own problem. It has nothing to do with me.
Yes. Yeah, I love it. And that's why even in the groups that I run in my practice, I see exactly that naturally happening where people will come in and their first session or two, they just listen and they hear other people, kind of shedding their shame and coming in and saying, oh, I have, even if it's little things that you don't even realize you hold shame around, like I feel jealous of my partner, right? That's like a small-ish thing that somebody will come in and say, "Oh, I'm jealous of my partner." And it's, the fear is you're supposed to support your partner. You're supposed to be so happy for them when they're happy or things like this. And then you hear someone else say, "Oh my gosh, I feel that same way too." So that's that little baby step is just listening to other people, kind of shedding their shame might be that might be a little baby step towards you doing it, is just hearing other people do it. And then I'll find someone will come out and they'll tell a story that feels a little bit, lighter, but drop a little seed of, "Oh, well, when I was in an unhealthy relationship," and then back to the other less
Yeah.
shameful story. And then sometimes someone will kind of bite the bait and say, "Oh, I heard you say that. Do you wanna say more about that?" And then it's like, "Oh, they wanna know. They're
Yeah.
interested, they're curious." So I agree. I see that unfolding very naturally in group therapy settings and even in individual therapy where people know they have something big to talk about, but it takes them oftentimes a few sessions where they have to, like, take a baby step and a baby step and a baby step until they're ready. So I think that one little baby step is a great place to start.
I think the experience of starting to talk about things that have happened to us, things that you feel shame about, I think sometimes it ends up being a beautiful experience to, in a safe environment to start talking about because inevitably, I know in my life, I've been so surprised by I've started to talk about things and I was really scared to bring it up because I felt like such a weirdo, like, how did this happen to me? But you start to talk about it, and inevitably, or at least what I found, is there are other people that can relate to it. And you start to feel less like a weirdo and you start to feel less alone. And it's, I don't know. I feel like healing happens in community. It's really hard to heal all by yourself, in my
Oh,
opinion.
yes. Yes, 100%. And that is kind of the cure for shame is and again, coming back to the example of AA or NA, it's sort of that model substance abuse and many people that do feel experience deep levels of shame will quiet that shame voice by using drugs or using alcohol or sex or gambling or sleeping or screen time or whatever your addiction is to quiet that voice. So the way that these programs work is we are going to tell our story of our most shameful moment in a room full of between 20 and 80 people or whatever it is. And that commute feeling of being accepted by a community despite what we think is this unacceptable experience, it's so healing. So we don't cure substance abuse by just not using our substance.
Right.
We cure it by shedding our shame in community. And then in turn, we give back. And then we find someone else that needs to have that experience. And we provide that container for them to shed their shame. And then you kind of get at the root instead of just dealing with, okay, well, just don't drink.
Just
And
quit
that's
it.
part of it. Yeah, just quit it. Right. If we don't deal with the shame that's driving the behavior, we're not going to be able to change it. And sometimes that is even what keeps someone in if we're talking about an abusive relationship or something
Yeah.
like that, what keeps you in it is like, this is the only other person that knows. I haven't told anyone else about this. So now I don't, I'm stuck in this cycle of not being able to have any other support. So I'm stuck with this person that is my abuser that's causing my shame.
Well, you use a phrase that shed your shame. I've heard you
Yeah.
talk about this before. It's a really clear, succinct phrase that I think is super helpful. You talked about this a little bit just now about how shame can be so painful and causes so many destructive habits at times. But shedding your shame can be really painful too, and
Yeah.
I think the process of shedding your shame can be so difficult, and to your point, a lot of people avoid it because the price to make that change is really feels really high. I've actually heard some people say, "Well, I just don't think about it, I just don't deal with it, and I'm fine with that." So they kinda just stay there. To
Right.
your mind, and I know this is a very basic question, why is it important in the first place to shed your shame?
Yeah, it is a great question because if you're functioning well, right? Like, let's say you're not an addict or you're not doing anything super destructive and you're functioning through your life, it can feel like, okay, I can just keep trucking like this. But you described it in that moment of connection that you have with someone. And it can just be even when you meet a new person and I don't know, let's say you're trying to make a new friend and you're just kind of like staying on the surface and like, oh, the weather. And, you know, uh, it feels like your heart is just either closed or stuck.
Yeah,
That moment when someone goes there and says something vulnerable and the other person says, oh, I totally understand, or me too, or oh, I know exactly how you feel. Now your heart sort of opens and there is this energy exchange, and that feeling of belonging is so intrinsic to our general level of feeling peaceful in life, not scared. I mean, it's literally biology. So, when backtrack a little bit, when we first evolved into tribal humans, we lived in groups of like between 50 and say 150 humans that would just walk around the earth together. We didn't even stay in one place. We were kind of
yeah.
nomadic, walking the earth. So there's this idea of like the group would move on. And if you were excluded, it was pretty much death. Like that's how humans kind of conquered the earth is by cooperating and working together. And so it's really built into our DNA that if we have this constant fear of disconnection, that we're living our it's the same area of the brain that lights up when you have physical pain is the same area of the brain that lights up when you are being excluded
Oh,
in a
wow.
group, which is really
That's
interesting.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it causes this real physiological, and that's a lot of the work that I do is like understanding your nervous system. So if your nervous system is constantly being activated by this idea of if this person finds out about this thing, or I can't be my full self because I don't want to open up about this whole time in my life or this experience that I had, there's this constant thread of nervous system activation and fear of being excluded that once you can go there, and again, I don't want to just put it out there like, just go run and tell the next person you see about your
Put it
most
on
shame.
billboard.
Yeah. You do have to find a safe space because it's really, really scary. But once you do it, it like almost just removes this entire block that I think can give you an overall feeling of peace. And the only way I can describe it is that moment, like I said, when you meet a new person and somehow you have that moment of vulnerability, all of a sudden that interaction feels exciting and warm and fuzzy and loving. Whereas if you're just talking about the weather and the surface and whatever at work, or, if you have kids, it can feel a little draining almost. Like that's why I think a lot
Yeah.
of people socially feel drained because they're not being their full selves. So now social interactions become fueling instead of draining because you're not hiding this
Yeah.
thing.
Well, it's ironic, from how you define shame earlier, the thing that is a fear of disconnection is causing you to be disconnected from other people. Because
Yes.
people aren't dumb. I think that's the thing that sometimes we, underestimate, like, we think we're putting on a good face, a good show, I've got everything all together, but other people sense it. Like,
Mhm.
they know you're not being real with them, they know that there are other things going on, and most people are hungry for those real conversations and
Mhm.
real connection. So it's just really interesting to me that the thing that is caused because 'cause you're afraid people won't like you anymore, that will just being fear of being disconnected, that's exactly what's keeping you from being connected in a real way to other people.
100%. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which is why I think sometimes these patterns emerge, right? And like, I've had this shameful experience. I never really did the work in group therapy or in, individual therapy or joining some type of a support group. I never really did that work. And so now I'm like holding in this shame. And so I find maybe this other, if it's like another toxic kind of person or another addictive behavior. So if you're out there and you're finding that, why do I keep finding myself in these repetitive, unhealthy, stressful situations? I would peek around and see if there's some shame under there because that's oftentimes the root at what keeps us stuck in almost like just these protective, defensive, whether it's relationships or behaviors that do not allow us to get at the root and kind of find that peace to say no or to, be alone with our thoughts or be alone in general without this fear of this greater sense of disconnection. So yes, I totally agree. It can become really a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way.
Well, and two, flipping it to the other side of this, because so many people feel shame because of things that happen to them, but there are also so many people that have done things
Mhm.
that they feel shame about. Can you talk about the differences between shame and guilt, and how do you move beyond maybe something really bad that you've done, keeping it from defining you the rest of your life?
Yeah, that's a big, big, tough question, right? And um, I think that shame and guilt is more like I feel badly about this one thing that I did maybe this one time. Whereas shame feels like this, even if it is one thing that I did one time, it feels like it defines me as a person. So it's much bigger and heavier and harder than, oh, I cheated on a partner once.
Mhm.
If that's something that I think a lot of people feel shame around. And, I think that is something that's more, it could be shame as like, I am a bad person because I did that, or guilt as like, I did this one thing this one time, but I don't generalize that to my entire sense of self. And this is what I try to do in my therapy groups is create kind of this um, AA concept for things outside of substance abuse, because the substance abuse is just the symptom, or the addiction is just the symptom. And part of what they do there too is take a moral inventory, all the things that I've done, and be not shove the skeletons in the closet. You have to be first step is you have to become able to think about these things and lay them on the table or write them down, and then you make amends, whether in some way you kind of find the people that you've hurt, you address what you've done. Um, Ideally, offer a way that you can support them, or what do they need, or if there's anything you can do to make it better. And then at that point, it helps to be able to be like, okay, I've done the best that I can with this. I've acknowledged what I've done, and it makes it a little bit easier to kind of move past it and let it go versus, okay, I've done this thing. I hope no one finds out. I'm shoving the skeletons in the closet.
Yeah.
They keep trying to come out. I keep shoving them back in. I don't even want to look at this thing, let alone speak it out loud, let
Right.
alone speak it out loud to another human. So the first one is just like pulling it out and looking at it yourself. And it does help even in that context where you do it together with a sponsor, right? So you have another person there. So, and it doesn't, we don't, this is not a plug for AA, right? It's just, um,
It's a good program.
right. It's a good program. This is not, but it's the concepts that underlie it that I think we can bring into our lives in other ways around the thread being shame. And it's a good framework for how to shed your shame. Like that
Yeah.
program is a great framework of shedding your shame because someone figured out, I don't know, whatever it is, 100 years ago, that shame is at the root of a lot of these unhealthy behaviors. So yeah, it's a lot of work. I think finding a trusted person or a group or um, is a great way to start. But even if you don't have that yet, right? I think sometimes we can do some work in just acknowledging, allowing yourself to sit with it, soften into it, breathe into it. Like what we do is the second that we have that shameful thought, like I said, it's almost like physical pain. Like I'm going to pull my hand out of the fire.
Right.
I'm I'm gonna retract with just the thought of it, and what that does is it just keeps the avoidance pattern going. So I think if you can just pull that shameful thought out, maybe some meditation helps, some relaxation exercises, and being able to sit with just the thought and kind of soften and breathe and tolerate that even just within yourself, then maybe it can help you move towards doing that with another person.
Well, and funnily, I think I got what I'm about to say from you. I'm not absolutely positive, but I think you're the one that said this and it stuck with me.
Sure.
When you've done something wrong, and you feel some shame over it and you're working through it, and then someone is maybe mad at you and shaming you and really upset with you, perhaps validly,
Mhm.
part of you feeling additional shame over it and being vulnerable to those interactions is because you believe it about yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it's less about what they're saying and more that it's putting right in front of your face how you feel about what you've done, how about who you are.
Yes. Yeah. And oftentimes I think the things that we ruminate about, the kind of that thing, like I'm having an argument in the shower, like I'm arguing with somebody else in my own head, while I'm, brushing my teeth or taking a shower. Like when those moments, you're kind of like, maybe I need to just look at what I'm defending against.
Yeah.
Maybe they were right. Maybe I was rude, or maybe I shouldn't have done that thing that they're upset with me about. It is the quickest way, and our bodies like to be efficient. Like if we're talking about this area of your brain that gets activated when you feel like if the tribe thinks I'm a bad person, they might not share their antelope with me, or they might
Yeah,
not.
and I'm gonna
They
starve.
You're right. They might leave and go someplace else in the, early hours of the morning, and I might be sleeping and I wake up and everyone's gone. If they find out that I'm not a good person, there is, cooperation is a huge part of how we survived as humans. So when that feels threatened that this person's going to be mad at me, the quickest thing that we often do is defend. No, I didn't. Well, I shouldn't, and this is why, and I did it because. And that's kind of what you're describing there. And it is helpful. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably introspective,
Yeah,
probably looking for some growth. So when you notice yourself getting defensive, it can be really helpful to say, okay, what's maybe they're right. What could be causing their pain? What is something that I did do? And if I can tolerate, drop your shoulders, literally. There's so many self-help things out there, right? There's very simple ones that are so powerful. Take a nice deep breath. What's often I like to do, take a nice deep breath, take an extra sip of air at the top of your breath. And then when you breathe out, soften your face, soften your shoulders, and it will give you a little bit more space to tolerate. Yeah, you know what? I was like, whatever it is, flirting with that person's partner at this party or whatever. And yeah, maybe I needed an ego boost. And I
yeah,
felt like in I'm just picking obviously a random
yeah,
example. Um, you know what? I I probably that probably wasn't I could see why they'd feel that way. And then if you can come to them with some softness and sort of own that, now that connection's back. That one that you
yeah.
thought was so threatened, a lot of times it won't be. Sometimes it will be, right? Like if you, I don't know, had sex with that person's partner, I don't know, that might be done
Probably
for.
not gonna continue with, your friendship with that person, but we
Right,
can clear the air and
right.
move on and don't do it again.
Right. I mean, so you're probably not gonna stay the point is the other path of, like, defensiveness and argue you're not connecting anyway. So I do think that the change starts with us, and if we can, kinda get to that place where we say, "Hey, what can I face in myself first here, and then can I admit it to this other person?" I think it's the best pathway to reconnecting, but sometimes we can't even tolerate it just within our own mind. That's why that breath, softening, I can handle this. I can handle that I made a mistake. Like I'll have patients come in
Yeah,
that are in their 40s and they're, guilt ridden or shameful about something they did when they were 21. All your cells in your body have rejuvenated. Like you're not even physically the same exact person,
yeah,
but you're still holding yourself so, in so much shame for something so old. So often we just have to kind of own it and allow it and forgive ourselves. And then we can, move
yeah.
on in that way.
Like, do you wanna be stuck there for decades of your
Mhm.
life? I have an extreme example that I think it is extreme, but I think it really illustrates this. I had a conversation with a man, named Shaka Senghor, who, currently he's an MIT fellow, he's a best-selling author, but when he was 17, he shot and killed a man in cold blood. He went to prison. I believe it was for 19 years, and much of it was in solitary confinement. And he talks about, he's has a really powerful story, but he talked about the rate of return, that people might leave prison, commit another crime, and they go right back. And he said, I felt like for me, I needed to take radical accountability. I really need to sit with what I did. And he's very open about what he did and that it was wrong. And his whole message, which I think is very relevant here, is you are more than the worst thing you have done. And you
Mhm.
are more than the worst thing that has happened to you. And that's really the doorway to getting through it to the other side.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the conversation we're having now about like being able to sit with the worst thing you've done and also not let it define you as a
Right.
person. And sometimes when you don't sit with it or speak it, like the fact that he's out there and he's talking to you and he's, really speaking out about it, I'm sure is part of his healing
Yeah,
journey.
it is.
Because when it just sits in there and it just you ruminate and it stews and it pops up and you push it down and it pops up and you push it down. That's you're not you almost feel like this becomes my identity because at any moment this thing can catch you off guard, or someone might bring it up, or someone might look at you in a way and you think, oh my gosh, do they know? Or are they thinking about that? And when you're more open about it and out about it and kind of cleanse your soul in that way, there's not this constant fear of what if someone
Yeah.
finds out because they know, because I said it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've owned it already, so they can't make you feel bad about something you've already owned and accepted and are open about.
And there's some level of exposure therapy, which I think it sounds like he's doing, which is like the more I sit with this, the reality of this, and I talk about it. I mean, interestingly, that he was in solitary confinement, which isn't the best place to
Yeah,
do any of this.
right.
But the more often you can kind of pull it out, drop it on the table in front of you, look at it, talk about it, then it doesn't, each time that you do that, it can feel less and less activating to your nervous system, and that shame, fear of exclusion part of your, it's biology. It's every time we even think about it, it's going to activate that, part of your brain that feels pain and discomfort. And then what do? We want to make that go away as quickly as possible. We
Right.
shove it down and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Now, you want to move on to, I actually put out a call for listener questions. I was like, I bet people have some like exact questions about this. And there was a lot. There were a lot of questions that came in, which kind of speaks
Oh,
to how
cool.
big of a thing this is. But I thought this question was really interesting, and I'm interested to see what you think about it. She asked, how does shame impact someone's ability to take accountability in a relationship?
Yeah. Great question. Huge, right? Because I think, again, if we look at it as like there's an area of your brain that starts firing, that you've conditioned yourself that when this area of my brain starts firing, I shut it down. I either defend myself, or I um, just think about something else, or I use an addictive behavior. That's what you've conditioned yourself to. So that way, when your partner just brings up, I don't know, I didn't like the way you spoke to the waiter
Yeah.
at the restaurant, right? I thought you were kind of rude. Something going on. And then when you train that area of your brain, that same shame area of your brain's lighting up, and you've now conditioned yourself, shut it down, get defensive. No, it's not. And we kind of can condition ourselves very quickly. And then that person is not feeling validated. They're not feeling connected because maybe they just want to think, hey, are you okay? Is something wrong? Are you irritable? Did that something trigger you? Now you're not open to it because you're so preoccupied with shutting down that painful shame center. Let's call it the shame center of your brain.
Yeah.
You're so quickly trying to deactivate that you're not realizing, hey, my partner might be looking for some kind of connection or conversation. And yeah, so yeah, it's a great question because I think this happens all the time.
I think so too. And it doesn't mean you're a bad, like, I almost think that's maybe where it comes from a little bit. Like, you're extrapolating it into, I'm a bad person, I am worthless. Like, you just go way off, after someone has said like something small. It's kind of that thing where you're projecting how you feel about yourself and the shame that you have about yourself rather
Mhm.
than taking accountability for something that maybe you shouldn't have done or you need to repair with the other person. I actually had a relationship years ago with a friend. And I had to end the friendship because every time I tried to talk to them about something, they would have a huge freak out, like sobbing, crying, getting really, and it's exhausting on the one hand. But then it's also like, wow, we can't ever have a basic conversation. This is a one-way street. And I feel like I'm being held hostage in this relationship because I can't be real with you because it's not worth it the way you're
Yes.
gonna react.
Yes, yes, and I think you find that, and I'm not diagnosing this friend or so, like, but you find that a lot in, like, borderline personality disorder, where most of those, a lot of people that have that, there is this huge, deep shame underneath everything. Like, I feel like that's just kind of that's a hallmark feature of that,
Mm.
and, because of that, and because of their inability to tolerate feelings of shame, you get reactions like that. If you're like, "Hey, we were supposed to go out to dinner and, I really didn't like that, you canceled, or it was really annoying that you showed up 30 minutes late." And I'm sitting there and then there's this big reaction. It's exactly what you're describing. They're pulling up every other thing that they ever, shameful, the big, heavy, hard, shameful things. And now I can't take another drop in this bucket. And that's probably what I think you were feeling. It's hard to be in those types of relationships because it feels like if you could just, kind of share with me, we can connect. But when you're, having these big, huge reactions about it, I don't even, it, you end up feeling like, oh, now it's my fault. I shouldn't have brought this up.
Yeah,
And
like,
now you're
how
walking on
why did
eggshells.
I
That is a hard space in relationship to feel like you have to walk on eggshells. And oftentimes people that are creating that feeling around them with other people around them, there is often shame at the root of why you feel like you're walking on eggshells. I mean, in no way, you don't have to be her therapist and um, kind of fix
Yeah,
that. At some point, you have to say, all right, I've got to walk away from this because I can't, you're so fragile that you feel like you have no voice in the relationship at a certain point.
I did have an interesting, moment. It was at the end of our friendship, and she was having a big freak out over something. I don't even remember what happened. But I need to talk to you about this, and there was a big reaction, and I just kinda stood there because it's like the 30th time this had happened, and I looked at her and I said, "I'm not fooled by this. Like, stop." And she stopped immediately. And
Ooh.
I was like, "Oh, this is a, like, whole thing
Mhm.
here," like, trying to put that wall in between you and other people. I don't know, it was a really, like, light bulb moment for me of understanding how some of these things work in real life. Because I think if you're a kind person, of course, you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're so upset, what can I do to help?" And then over time, you start to see it a little bit differently, that you have to be brave to step out of those things, or you're never gonna have a true, authentic friendship or a healthy relationship in your life if that's where you're stuck.
Yep.
Which does take me to a very related, second listener
Sure.
question.
Let's do it.
Why do some people have such a high tolerance for shame and some people feel paralyzed by it?
That's a good question. I mean, I think some of it might be biology, the same way some people are more predisposed to anxiety, like their bodies again, it lights up an area in your brains very similar to the feeling of if you're in pain or getting burned or so. So I think some people are just more sensitive to that. Um, like physiologically more sensitive or their nervous system is more sensitive. I think, probably upbringing and parenting
Mhm.
and kind of how shame was handled in your home. And again, even to bring back the example of your friend, those outbursts in response to shame, which I'm assuming some of it was, probably were working for her. Right?
Yeah.
In a lot of relationships, like, it probably worked with you for many years, like, "Okay, okay, like, I'll back off. I'm not gonna, keep going with this." So I think sometimes depending on how your attachment figures handled feelings of shame or I think that can make you very much more sensitive because maybe if you did try to express a shameful emotion and it wasn't received well or you felt more disconnection in expressing those shameful emotions, then that could kinda cause that self-fulfilling doubling down
Yeah.
on shame. So I think it's a big question. There's a lot of factors. I think some of it can be biological, physiological, and some of it can be, "Okay, my brain has learned that this seems to be the most efficient, effective way to deal with this feeling."
You're like, I'm figuring some big things out right now, right here. Because, yeah, I think that is what was going on. It was, I think, working for her because I mean, it was really painful. I mean, I'm not gonna think she thought it was amazing, but it was a way that she could avoid actually facing some of these things. It was working, like, to get out of it, and then, yeah, people are not gonna bring anything up to you because, again, it's not worth it. Um and also you feel like you're hurting the other person. It's like, "That's not what
Yeah.
I'm trying to do," and you go so far walking on eggshells like, "I love you, I care about you, this is a problem, but I love you, and I care about you," and it just gets to a point where it's like, "This is impossible."
Yes, and I even see it. I have a 13-year-old daughter, so we have a lot of these interactions where, for example, she has her phone now and she's constantly on her group chats and texting. And, sometimes as parents, we feel like we're just being used. Like, you want Starbucks, you want to go to, you want to go shopping, that you come find us when you want what you want, and then you sort of hide out and just bury your face. So we'll bring these things up, right? And if that area and that shame, probably, which is not what I'm trying to do, but I think ultimately she might end up feeling like, oh, I'm a bad kid, I'm a bad person, I'm selfish.
Yeah,
Um, so when she starts to feel that, if we've brought it up one too many times, or now that part of her brain gets activated, I see this tendency where she tests. If I have a big reaction, this is why teenagers sometimes will slam doors or the typical behavior. If I have this big reaction, maybe I can make it stop. Like, maybe they'll just be like, oh my gosh, leave her. Like, and
teenagers.
yeah, and sometimes it works, right? Like, you have this big
Yeah,
reaction, you storm into your room, you slam the door. Guess what? The conversation's now over. So you
yeah,
figured out that, like, if I have a big reaction, nobody wants to be around it, so the conversation can end. So
right,
I think even at that young age, there's people are starting to try to figure out dancing that line of, like, how long can I tolerate sitting here and hearing how I've hurt somebody? Um,
yeah,
can I sit and tolerate hearing that? How many times, can I hear it before I freak out? And then what happens after? So to answer this listener's question, I don't know what happened when you were 13 and your parents were
yeah,
telling you whatever they were telling you that you didn't want to hear. So I think it is those things can start to add up to help us either feel like, okay, I feel safe sharing my shameful feelings, so I really look at the body as like emotional energy that we can't see it, so it's hard to believe in it. Some people feel like it's kind of woo woo,
mhm.
energy exchanges and all of that, but I'm a big believer that there is a physical component to emotional energy that we just haven't figured out how to measure,
Oh,
or
I think that's so true.
yeah.
Yeah, it's full body situation, I
Yes,
think.
and the reason why I love crying, so I'll put this out there too. Crying to me is like that magical space where emotions have a physical form. We can feel the tears forming behind our face. We feel our nasal passages and our sinuses kind of start to shift and our body's reacting. There's energy change. So that I think when we cry, if we can open up and allow that energy to come up and out without blocking it, without choking it, without narrating it, which is the hardest part,
Yeah.
without creating a
Oh, yeah.
dialogue around it. So when I say feel your feelings, some people think, well, okay, I cried really hard today. But if while you were crying really hard, you had a running dialogue about whether it was okay to be crying hard and
Yeah.
why you're overreacting, or it shouldn't be worth it, or what the other person did, or what they shouldn't have. If you can just, when you're crying, literally do that same softening, not to make
Yeah.
the crying stop. You're not softening to stop crying, which I think a lot of people, we naturally do that thing.
Yes. I'm real good at
And
that one.
yes, yeah. So you don't need to make the crying stop. You just need to open the channel. And then I think it can so that's another way to deal with shame kind of on your own if you don't have a trusted person, is kinda allowing yourself to have that big, hard cry, but
Yeah.
without the story and the words and the narration around it. I don't know how I
Well, it's
kinda got off on
cathartic.
that tangent,
Well,
but,
no, I think that's really great because A, it's cathartic, but I think it is such we don't need to be talking through every moment, whether mentally or, out loud. Like, just be in the present moment, experience because you miss the moment. The thing is, if
Mhm,
you talk over everything, whether it's in your brain or out loud, I think that can really prevent you from being in the moment with what's happening. And then you miss it, because
mhm.
you were not actually there when it was happening.
Yes. So crying has a social component to it also, right? I cry, then I feel embarrassed that I cried, or was it worth it that I cried, or did this other person think I'm yes.
Spiral.
Yes, spiral. Exactly. So if when you're crying, you can literally focus on like the feeling of the tear coming down your cheek or that burning sensation as the tears start to form in your eyes. If you're in the moment of that feeling, like you said, then you learn to tolerate it and it doesn't feel so scary versus if just the sensation of and so many people feel this way and oftentimes in our society men I think feel this way even more than women. If I start to even think or feel the beginnings of a cry coming out, I shut it down so quickly and move on. So now what happens is we don't even know, we don't get to have the experience of like, that was actually okay. I'm okay. I can handle that. So the more you're in the moment of your feelings, like you're saying, you miss it. It's good. We don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
'Cause if we're in it, we learn, "Oh, wow, I can do that. I can cry. I can feel that, whatever that is. I can feel that shameful feeling. I can feel that grief feeling. I can feel that, and I don't have to do anything about it. I can just feel it, let my the same way you cut your finger and your skin heals all by itself, same thing with a cry, right, or an emotion. Like, if you just get out of your way and be in the moment with it instead of figuring, "Oh, should I? Shouldn't I? Is it right? Is it wrong? How do I make it go away? It's not going away. I have to go to work and I have to." I mean, look, I get people have to live life. You can't
Yeah.
have a big hard cry before you're about to get on a call.
Schedule it every day at lunch.
Yes, yes. But yeah, being in the moment of it, I think really kind of helps your body just it knows how to heal, but we just have to get out of our own way.
Oh, that's great. Your body does know how to heal, but we have to let it do its work.
And when we choke, I see this happen in therapy all the time. People start and they either apologize when they start to feel like they're gonna,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I didn't want this to happen. Oh, I didn't want to cry today. Oh, they apologize for it. They make, they try to shut it down, or I literally see like a choking down.
Yeah.
And it's just, we've been conditioned, you don't want to cry at school. Everyone's going to stare at you. What are they going to think and cry
Right.
baby. And so we've really been conditioned to not let our body do it. I say to my patients all the time, crying is like having diarrhea, right? Like your body needs to get rid of some toxin or some negative energy that's in there. You can't stop it. And
Yeah.
if you just clench up and try not to let it happen, guess what? It's going to happen at some point. Or with
Yeah.
emotional energy, it's not quite as forceful as like if I have to vomit or if I have to, have diarrhea. Sorry to get gross, but like it's a bodily function like any other. And if we don't let our bodies do what they know how to do, we end up holding on to that negative energy. And same way, like if you have a stomach virus, you got to get it out. You're
Yeah.
never going to heal otherwise.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I've been in therapy and I need to send you a copay today
Oh
a
no,
little bit.
I'm so, I'm sure I hope everyone out there, I have my own, even my story with my daughter and how to kind of
Yeah.
handle other people's emotions. And, I think we all have these moments that are probably going off in your head of like, oh, I realize this and it's very hard. I always want to end by saying none of this is easy because we are so conditioned to handle our emotions in a certain way. And it's very loaded.
Yeah.
So, baby steps, kind of working through it. But if you're interested in experiencing group therapy, come find me on that. Or obviously, tons of individual therapists out there. But I do think group therapy, it's hard to find it in this way. A lot of times um, it's focused on, you know, more addiction issues, but
Oh,
it's
yeah.
very helpful, even if you're not struggling with addiction. It's very helpful just to deal with everything that we're kind of talking about today. So there's help out there if you know, like, okay, I need to do this work. I'm just not exactly sure where to start.
Yeah. A first step.
Yeah,
I have two more questions to ask you as we're wrapping up here.
sure.
The first one is, what do you wish more people understood about shame?
I wish they understood that the best way out is through. And I know it feels really hard. We're dancing around it all the time. So like you will feel better when you get to the other side. It's like taking, like you said, when we first kind of full circle, when you first said just taking that first baby step, that
Yeah.
it really will pay off in the end if you can kind of pull it out there, drop it on the table in front of you and really take a look at it. I think it will clear up so much space in your head and your heart, and allow you to just kind of be more at peace. I know it's hard to even think about going there, but I promise you it'll be worth it.
And then in life, what do you know for sure?
What do I know for sure? That everything changes, nothing stays the same, and you know, big part of my philosophy and how I work with patients is not trying to fix the external thing, because
Mhm.
we can't control any of that. So the thing I know for sure is that the way to find peace in life is to learn how to handle what comes at us rather than trying to control what comes at us.
Yeah.
Um,
Because you have no power over that part.
yeah, nothing. You never know. So if we walk through life being like, well, if I find my partner, everything will be okay. If I have my baby, everything will be okay. If I get the promotion, everything will be okay. If I move to this neighborhood, if this person, is cured from this disease, everything will be okay. Well, not really, because we're all going to go at some point.
Yeah.
So micromanaging all the outside stuff isn't going to help. The way to kind of move through it is to just be able to, that doesn't mean it's gonna feel good. You're gonna cry, right? Like, it's gonna be hard. You're gonna have those big, hard cries, but my one of my favorite mantras is, "I can handle this."
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, you could lose your whole life, and I think sometimes people do too. "Oh,
Mhm.
when this happens, I'll be happy. When this happens, life will be good." And then eventually you realize it doesn't ever happen because you had the wrong attitude, or I don't wanna say wrong attitude, the attitude that wasn't gonna get you to feeling happy and peaceful no matter what is happening to you or around you.
Yeah,
Probably
and
saying that in a messy way, but
that's why I wanted to really come on this podcast, because I'm sure people that are listening to this or the guests that you have on this show know that better than anyone else.
yeah,
They had something happen to them that didn't go as planned, where they thought they were on one track and ended up on a different one, and they're still here and they're breathing in and out
yeah,
and they're talking about it. So I think your show is an amazing platform for people to come on and talk about how hard that is,
yeah.
right? To handle the unexpected, but the whole thing is unexpected. All of life is unexpected. And sometimes you see everybody that looks like their lives are perfectly curated with all the right things. And if only my life could be like that person, then I'll feel at peace. But it starts with you, and it starts with, I can handle this.
That's such a powerful message because you're right. The people that have come on this show have experienced some of the worst things that can happen, terminal diagnosis, major cancer diagnosis. They've gone to prison because of something they've done, all kinds of different things, addiction. And what I think is interesting, and I've noted this with a few different people, we're smiling, we're laughing. Guess what? It didn't kill you. And you can even, you go through some trenches, but it is possible to get to a place where you are happy and you are peaceful. And that horrible thing that happened in your life wasn't the end. It might have felt
Yes.
like the end, but it wasn't.
Yes. And I really admire and respect every guest that you have that comes on here and not only talks to a therapist or you or one single person protected under HIPAA and privacy acts, and they're coming out and they're sharing their story with all of your listeners. And I really admire every single guest that's been on here for being able to do that and give other people the courage to and real life in the flesh examples of like when you don't hold it in and you share and you shed your shame in a big way publicly, it can be super healing. And that's probably part of why they're smiling and you're having a chuckle together and, just being able to enjoy life again.
Yeah, that's how you do it. All right. So, Dr. Bernstein, thank you so much for being here today. It's been such a treat for sharing your story, your expertise. Where can people find you? I know we talked about it a little bit, but where can people find you if they want to work with you in one of your groups or hear more from you?
For sure. You can find me at naomibernstein.com. I don't have a lot on socials. I find that it just like takes up space in my head. And so I'm not really too active on there, but come to my website. You can sign up for a group or just ask questions. There's a lot of info on there that you can find out for individual therapy. I really love couples and I love doing this type of nervous system, like having two people in there together where they just keep, coming at each other and they can't find that space. I think uncovering the shame under there, being able to regulate their nervous system before they start to have conversations, untangling patterns like what you had with your friend where someone has a big reaction and the other person backs off. So I love helping couples kind of untangle that. So yeah, if you're looking for any of that, come find me, naomibernstein.com.
And I'll make sure to link all of this in the show notes so you don't have to scribble this down furiously. I'll link it in the show notes. So if you go there, you'll be able to find Naomi really easily.
Perfect.
So that
Okay.
helps, I found.
Yeah, so you take and yeah, also come listen to Oversharing. We have a good time on there and we talk about, just all sorts of interpersonal issues. So and we try to keep that pretty funny and light. So yeah, check that out too.
Yeah, it's a great show. I really appreciate the way that y'all handle it because you offer advice and thoughts and introspection that are actually very, helpful, practically helpful and cause you to see things in a different way. But then you're also funny. So it's
Yeah,
enjoyable
awesome.
to learn at the same time.
Oh, good. Thanks so much for that. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to everyone who is listening to the Happily Never After, especially those of you who are on your own journey. We hope you have a great week.